first one, I want to thank you for taking the time to
Yeah.
chat with me. I know how incredibly busy you are and how many stops you have on the road. And when I came up with this idea, I set out specifically for two people, and that was you and Marianne Eaves. So, um,
She and I were just she and I were just tagging each other on social yesterday about two different things.
okay, very cool, very cool. So I personally first learned about you through the Breakfast Club because it is what it is. I'm a huge fan. So I mean, I was following Breakfast Club for years, and then you popped up, and I'm in the alcohol industry, and I'm like, what is going on? Uh, so I did a bit of digging. Are you chasing adrenaline, or are you chasing success, or what's the end
Who,
game?
me?
Yeah,
Oh, now, it's so funny. It's not adrenaline or chasing. I don't feel like I'm chasing anything, actually. I apparently am very efficient in my work because people think that I don't sleep and that I work around the clock. And I always tell people, not only do I sleep 8 hours a night, but I take off 24 hours every single week and have religiously for 24 years. And
wow,
so that is, I think maybe I get so much done during the day, I guess, because I pack it in and I
yeah,
don't, I don't deal with a whole lot of nonsense. So that saves me time. But no, and I really am not doing that much to me. To the
right.
outside world, it looks like a lot, but for me, it just is everything that fits into my day as a part of my overall purpose. And but no, in game, I would have to say is just making sure that we've set this up and we've established this company in such a way that it lives on way beyond me. I would be really disappointed if 4 generations down the line this company was not still growing. And so that's my absolute focal point.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I had a question later on, but you touched on it. A lot of my friends are in the multicultural avenue for alcohol beverages, and
Which I would
everything.
like to blow up, but that's okay. Go ahead. I hate that we have multicultural divisions because in and of itself we've separated out a group of people and
Yeah,
that we are keeping from the top jobs because we're not giving them access to the full portfolio. But anyway, go ahead. We'll
no, that, that's actually the crux of the entire interview.
All right,
And
let's do it. I hate
it,
those departments.
well, those departments far has been diversity, inclusion, multicultural avenues, that type of thing, and a lot of walls that people are hitting are the people who are doing the actual hard work. They're not sitting in the boardroom. At the end of the day, it's a whole different class of that are in that boardroom.
I think that it is very similar to if you take two little girls, if you take two 4-year-olds who have never been introduced to race, if you take them into a toy store and say, pick a doll, the
Mm-hmm.
black girl is going to pick a black doll and the white doll is going to pick a white doll because we are drawn to things we are familiar with.
Oh
And
wow,
in the spirits industry, what has been familiar has been white male. And so
that's
white males have surrounded themselves with white males and they
right.
have continued to surround themselves with white males. And so I don't think that anyone is intentionally doing it. I just
Right.
think that there hasn't been an intentionality not to do it.
That's very true.
And there is a distinction.
Right, right. Very good point. Very good point. That you're going to go with what you're familiar with, and that if that's what they're familiar with and with who they've been surrounding themselves with, that's what they're going to do. So, yeah, very, very good point. Did you ever think that you would be able to find a career allow you to merge all the things you've done, being a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and then the Nearest Green project and the foundation, and put them all together and be able to weave them together so well?
Never thought about it. Every aspect of my life has been purpose driven, every single aspect. And
Wow.
so, no matter what I've been in, I've been fully intentional in that moment and allowing for whatever opportunities come my way to be ready for them. And so, I'm not surprised that the opportunities that come to me are the ones that I'm prepared for. So, that would mean all the different things I've done in my background just sort of all come together on this particular
Right.
project. But I venture to say, I mean, I'm 44. When I'm 64, I'll still very much so be a part of this and involved in this. But it's not to say that there won't be another aspect of something that's been brought into my life that I fully embrace and go full on. And so I'm not surprised. No.
Wow. So you're saying if you do things for the correct reason and purposefully and you let things happen organically, things will work out for themselves in some respect?
Absolutely. I think for a lot of people, a lot of the limitations is people put their own limitations on themselves and what they
Right.
can do and what they can't do. And we manifest what we believe. And so
Yeah.
if we believe that there are barriers and glass ceilings and all the rest of that stuff, unfortunately, we continue to manifest that. When we determine that those things do not exist and they will not impact us, somehow, some way, they always end up being removed. I was talking to the CEO of the Charlotte Post yesterday, and he says to me, asked me a question about, about the barriers and the whatever, I don't know what you call them, the barriers and all the different things I've had, the hurdles, right?
Hurdles, right.
I said, I don't know what they are. I'm sure they exist, but
Right.
if I'm going down a path and it's my path, I don't care if there's a pothole, if there's a hurt, I'm going to drive around it. I'm going to go over it. I'm going to go under it, but you're not going to keep me from living out my purpose. And so my philosophy, I think, is more of a no excuses philosophy. If I want that top spot, I'm taking that top spot. Yeah. and I'm not going to allow myself to give myself an excuse for why I don't have that top spot. And I know that that's, not necessarily the approach that most people take. And so for me, it's a lot of times those conversations for people are not fun to have with me because I give myself no excuses.
Right.
None.
Wow.
And so I can't really give other people excuses. I don't give myself any.
Yeah. So you're saying a self-perpetuated manifestation. Like if you constantly thinking it's going to happen indirectly, subconsciously, and you're going to project it into whatever you're doing.
Absolutely. And so my company, for instance, you join Uncle Nearest, you're going to get an Uncle Nearest backpack, but with a bunch of books in it. And there's some of my favorite books. And one of those books that all of our team members have read and we sort of live by it each day is called Miracle Mornings and The Miracle Equation. Well, that's all about removing any kind of excuses or barriers and literally preparing every single day for success and whatever else might come in that particular day. A book that I give to a lot of our team members as well is Write It Down, Make It Happen. And so I'm building a culture in which nothing is impossible. Wow. And right now, I think, and this being in our industry, when you're looking at Diageo 41% down year over year, you're looking at this company, this percent down, and this company, this percent down. And Uncle Nearest is in its 9th quarter of year over year triple digit gains. How's that even possible, right? I have an entire team that doesn't believe in excuses for themselves.
Wow.
And so the question becomes, if the entire world is blowing up, how do we create our bubble and continue on our mission and continue our path and continue our growth? How do we do that if everything around us is literally going crazy? Yeah. And the answer is we don't give ourselves any excuses. We feel like there is a solution for every problem. Right. And the question becomes, how quickly can we get to that solution?
Yeah, that's a really great way to look at it. I mean, you're agile as well. You're able to shift. A lot of these companies, they're like B-52s. It takes a year for them to shift and turn, and by the time they have turned, the market's turned, and they're not agile enough. So yeah, I think the size of your company and then the no excuses thing, I mean, it goes hand in hand, and that's how you're able to sustain growth. I've read a lot of the numbers through hearsay about the month over month and quarter over quarter increases during COVID and during this craziness. But for you to confirm it and then hear it directly from the source, it's insane. I mean, what do you attribute that to other than, having that mindset? Is it because you're targeting a specific demographic or a specific segment or category, or is it just everything under the sun?
I think it's because we're doing the exact opposite.
Oh, really?
So I think because we are a African-American led company, the story is uniquely African-American, that people thought instinctively they're going to go after African-Americans.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're 14% of the population, less than 1% of American whiskey drinkers. Like that makes no sense. It's like the running joke of, if you ever wanted to make a millionaire, give a billionaire a horse farm. It is kind of, if you want to not create a brand that outlives you, then focus on one demographic and see how long you have before you're going to have to shift. And so if you look at demographics, one of the things that we did is, when I was coming into this, and especially raising capital or bringing distributors on board and all the rest of that stuff, every single one would ask me, who's your demographic? Yeah. And I would look at them and determine who they thought my demographic should be. And that's who I would tell them was my demographic.
Oh, wow.
So to one person, it's like, who's your demographic? African Americans. Who's your demographic? White males between this age and this age. Who's your demographic? White women between this age and this age. Depending on who was asking me the question would be the answer, because people were not in this industry yet prepared for the real answer, which was everybody.
Wow.
If you're buying a premium, a super premium spirit, I don't even care if it's whiskey. If you were buying a super premium spirit, you are my demographic, and you're who I went after. So because of that, that meant that we're, about 50-50 women, men. And then that meant that our demographic was literally the American population. So that's, 14% African-American. That's going to be just about 4.9% Asian, 24% Hispanic, 60% white. Like you start looking at that.
Right.
But then if you ever took time to look at my team members, my company, it mirrors that almost to a T.
Oh, really? Wow.
And so you've got a group of Americans that look like America, marketing uniquely to all of America. It just happens to work.
Happens to work. Yeah, no, that's amazing, because I've seen so many brands come to market and the very first slide on their PowerPoint is, this is our target demographic, and it's usually like 29 to 34 with an income level over 70K, double household, all those other criteria and it's proven time after time that mold's broken. I think if you take charge and you lead by example, you don't have to follow any type of cookie cutter recipe that someone else has laid out for you.
Well, yeah, because if you're saying we're going to narrow in and we're just going to target this 22%, then you're effectively saying you don't think your product is good enough for the 78 other percent. Why would they not like what the 22% likes? It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, that makes a lot of sense. The next thing that I want to ask you about is the nearest in Jack advancement. How is that going?
It's going awesome. Every single day, it's very rare for me to not have a call or text message exchange or email exchange with one of the Black-owned brands that we are helping. And initially, we thought we're going to come alongside one Black-owned brand and really give them as many resources as they need to go from surviving to thriving. But right now, we are in a moment in this country's history that if we could raise up more than one Black brand, there's a really good chance that Black brand will be able to survive, because people are looking for Black-owned brands. And so I literally, as these requests have been coming in, as long as the people are all in, meaning this is their full-time job. If you have another full-time job and this is your side hustle, I'm not interested, because I'm busy. So I am not going to help you with your side hustle. But if this is your full-time job and you've given up everything to go all in, then I'm going to help you, because I don't want to see you not succeed. I want to see more Uncle Nearest in this industry, meaning more businesses that are run by women in our spirits industry, more that are run and owned by African Americans and people of color. And the only way that you can really lift that up is somebody who's succeeded at it has to kind of say, hey, this is what worked and what didn't work. And for most of these guys, most of them need capital. Most of them need money. And so the first question I asked is, where's your business plan? All their business plans are garbage. And so that's where we have to start. Well, if you think about it, what's your background? What's your parents' heritage?
I'm Indian, born in America, and then my educational background's in finance and business management.
Okay, so I was a keynote speaker for Goldman Sachs a couple weeks ago, and one of the questions that their leadership was asking me, they said, we want to be able to help. We want to be able to do more than what we're doing. We want to be able to do our part. What can we do? I said, you have to remember that most people of color are first generation money. They're first generation entrepreneurs, like successful entrepreneurs, if they are. But the majority of us have no idea that what white men have been doing forever is putting together really solid business plans. Wow. And so the capital gap is not color, even though that's the way we break it down. That gap to a certain degree is knowledge. Most of us don't know the type of business plan that gets capital. I've had zero problems raising capital. Zero.
There's enough angel investors that will dive in on the right project.
Yeah, they're everywhere. But if you don't have the business plan that reads like they are accustomed to seeing, if you don't have the deck that allows them to get that information very quickly to make a decision before they pass, you're never going to get that capital. And so as I've begun helping these businesses, I've realized why they don't have capital is nobody ever told them what type of business plan gets sold. And so I told the Goldman Sachs guys, listen, if a plan hits your desk from a person of color or a woman, and you know that the business plan is absolutely not up to par to get funded, do not reject it. Go back to them and make it your responsibility to help them to get a business plan that can get funded. And so I think it's just a matter of us looking at things a little differently and going, all right, how do we help each other with the basics, all this lofty stuff?
Yeah.
Let's start with the business plan and the SWOT analysis. Let's begin there. And I've got several of the Black-owned brands right now that I have put with the person who does my business plans and has for 15 years, and now is doing their business plans, so we can raise capital beyond what Nearest and Jack Advancement Initiative are going to be able to do, but also to make sure that they are ready to succeed. And then we give them all the tools they need to be able to succeed from there.
So you're I don't know, inadvertently or not, you're organically driving flagship people who are preaching the brand and creating advocates. I don't know if that was the intention, but that's what you're definitely doing.
Definitely not. The intention was to make sure that Uncle Nearest wasn't the only successful brand owned by a person of color.
Right.
And
that's organic stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not afraid of competition. So raising up competition to me, it just makes the pie bigger. You're not taking a slice of my pie. We're expanding the pie together. And so that's how I look at it. It's
crazy you say that, because I've sat with some of the senior directors and senior directors of HR for some of these largest companies, because they've asked me to give them analysis on the market and who to hire and who not to hire. And I try to preach to them that, listen, my perspective on this might be a little bit different, but I honestly believe there's room for everybody to succeed. It doesn't have to be, he has to be put down for me to be put up. There's room for everybody. If you have an idea, or if you have some sort of plan to drive business, incremental business, or create a new chapter in the company's policy, there's room for you, and there's room for me, and there's room for everybody. I think if you can show that to your company, you're gonna grow through variables intangibles that you can't see right now. Actually, I wrote a blog post specifically on this because I was asked about it so many times by HR people. So that's awesome to see somebody that's actually living and breathing and living their truth organically through that mindset. So that's amazing. Just to get to know you a little bit personally, if I could.
Yeah.
Who are some of your personal influences, inside and outside the industry?
Yeah, so my personal influence, it's funny because most people have like people they can point to that are, and I'm an avid book reader. And so pretty much every entrepreneur that I have taken advice from, it's been in books. It's not been one-on-one. So maybe a part of the reason why I get so much done is I don't have people pointing me in the wrong direction. I'm able to look at their success, and I'm able to really hone in on the things that created their success that I like. And so like there's Ray Dalio has a book called Principles that I absolutely love. And so many of our founding guiding principles came from myself and my executive team reading that book. But he also has a style that can be a bit toxic to a certain degree. And so those are the things where I take out the things I love that I really resonate with, and I leave the rest. And so I have done that over time with just a massive number of people. And so currently in that orbit, I would say, things that I follow a lot that has to do with Warren Buffett. And I began doing that when I realized that he goes to McDonald's every morning for breakfast, and his wife puts in like a little cup thing, a cup holder. It's I think it's something like either $2 and something cents or $3 and cents. Yeah. And it depends on if the market is up or down, how much she'll put in there, and that'll determine what his breakfast is for the day. Right. And you're talking about someone who is, multi billionaire that is still adjusting their daily spending based on. And so, but I can't actually point to anyone and say that this is who is my influence that is around me. And I've never really had that.
Right. No, same here. I mean, I've read the Ray Dalio book. I've read the Warren Buffett stuff. I studied the Warren Buffett's professor's book. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I do extract some pieces from the book that I don't identify with. And I know Dalio took some heat last year for some foreign investment. So you got to pivot here and there, but that's very interesting that you do that. Can you discuss any of the projects that you have around the corner that you haven't let out of the bag yet?
No, because if I haven't let it out of the bag, there's a reason.
I had to try, right?
The one thing you'll find about us and our company is a lot of people talk and then they'll do. For us, we do and then we talk.
That's
And
awesome.
so, generally speaking, when we're talking about something, it's something that is, well, not generally speaking, always speaking, it is something that is already done. I think that's why we keep catching people by surprise, because so many talk in advance of actually doing, and we do the opposite.
Right. So something's staying with me here that you said earlier when you were doing the talk to prior
Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs. Okay. So you told them to revisit business plans that were not apropos. What was did you get any feedback or kickback from that? Like, why should we have to pursue somebody when we have our doors being knocked down?
No, it's not a matter of their pursuit. They don't even have to be the ones. So not only did I get no pushback, but I got nothing but nonstop feedback and text message and emails just saying that was absolutely incredible. It was an angle we hadn't thought about. It doesn't mean that they have to be the ones to fund. What they're
Okay.
doing is they're doing their part in society of leveling the playing field by
Wow.
helping those who would not already know what the business plans and the decks look like. When you look at my Uncle Nearest business plan and deck from day one, and you compare that to every single deck I have seen in this industry so far, and I've seen a lot of them,
Yeah.
there's no comparison. And so I knew, because I've been an entrepreneur for 26 years,
Yeah.
I've known for a very long time how to do a business plan, how to do a deck that gets funded, because I've had so many coming to me to get funded. And
Right.
so I've seen enough to know. Well, when I begin speaking to a lot of these brands and I say, okay, so where's your business plan? They're all like, you probably don't want to see that. I said, well, then that's our first problem we got to fix.
Yeah.
Because if you don't think I want to see it, how the hell are you going to get funded?
Right.
How do you get the capital you need to build your brand? And so for Goldman Sachs, it was very simple. You guys asked me, how can you help as individuals? Very
Okay.
simply. It costs you, it'll cost between $10,000 and $13,000 to build out the right to hire a company to do the right kind of business plan and the deck that truly gets capital funding. Underwrite it.
Okay.
That's what I was telling them to do. As individuals, y'all make a crap load of money. Underwrite the plan. When you see one that hits your desk, don't just reject it. Help them. That's now cost you $13,000 to help someone actually get on a pathway to success. That's a drop in the bucket for you.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that was what I was sharing with them.
Okay.
And
See, that makes
they
more
all
sense.
agreed.
I was trying to connect the links. I was thinking, so I studied effective altruism, and so I know how I want to connect people and why organically, because I want to help people. I couldn't figure out for the life of me why Goldman Sachs would be taking $13,000 dings to help people, but it makes sense because they reached out to you to ask how they could help. That's amazing.
And keep in mind, I was talking to them as individual people. They're
Okay.
all a bunch of wealthy. So people look at Goldman Sachs as a company. I was talking to them as individuals. You go in your own pocket. $13,000 a drop in the bucket. Don't go to Goldman Sachs asking them. You asked me, how can you help? That
Mhm.
means you as an individual, how can you help? So you
Yeah.
as an individual can mentor another individual.
That's huge. Yeah, that is huge. I try to mentor as many people as I humanly can, and at first it was around the altruism aspect, but then I saw things coming back tenfold in dividends. Like people just coming back and helping me for no reason and connecting the dots. And a lot of people will say, "Okay, well, what do you need out of this?" And like, I don't need anything out of this. I just do well for yourself, and we'll see how it goes. So
Amen.
that's yeah. The Uncle Nearest brand. What I don't want to see happen with it, and I know you don't care what I think, but what I don't want to see happen with it is spin off into a giant conglomerate.
When you say spin off, do you mean sell?
There's a lot of dicey.
Say that again?
There's a lot of dicey verbiage there. Like, sell is the easiest way to put it. Become another section of another company.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
No, it doesn't make sense. Why would I build the first African American owned major spirit brand and then come under a white person? It's not that I don't love white people. I absolutely love everybody. But
Right.
every other major brand is white owned.
Yeah.
So that makes zero sense. Right now I'm wrapping up my Series C, my Series C, and it took us a whopping not even 2 weeks to raise $20 million, and it's all individuals. Every series I've ever done, I have no private equity, I have no venture capitalist. That means there's nobody trying to push me to flip, sell, merger, or anything else. I have not added one person to my board over this entire time. I am the board. And so because of that, the reason I have done that is to make sure that this company is positioned to continue to grow independently and that it is able to continue to be led by myself. And then at some point when I'm, too old to do it, then pass it on to someone else who kind of looks a lot like me. And
Yeah.
we will, keep this thing going. But I've said no to almost everybody so far. And if I've
Oh,
not said no, and that means they haven't asked, and there's a really good chance they haven't asked because they've heard me publicly already say no. So they don't even need to bother. So yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
no, that makes sense with the preface of the organic, and not doing anything for a specific reason or chasing some sort of success. You're doing it for your own reasons. The reason I had to ask that, and I've seen it on record before, is because everything that's come before Uncle Nearest has followed the prototypical cookie cutter algorithm, which is, build the brand up and then sell it to a conglomerate. They then throw it against the wall, beat the brand equity out of it, diminish the price capacity, it drops into the floor, and then no one's ever heard of it again. So I was like,
Yep.
This is something that I personally connect with. I love the brand. I do not want to see this happen. I've seen it happen with so many.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think though the unique thing, and I do think that it may be a part of why I was the person who was chosen to do this brand. I don't believe that I was the only person who could have. This could have been given. This mission and purpose could have been given to a number of people, and I think that a part of why it was given to me is because I owned everything I wanted in life before I began this brand, and so I am able to make decisions that have nothing to do with money because I already have everything that I want. I have.
That makes all the difference in the world, because you're not working on a tightrope. When you're working on a tightrope, you're forced to make decisions that you might not want to make. And I've tried to teach my kids that as well. Well, what I'm teaching my kids is I'm not just going to give them money, that type of thing. You need to make your own way in life, but know that if you make decisions for your best interest organically and what you believe in personally, just stick with it and you'll see the dividends and the success follow with it. If you deviate and you try to chase the money, it's not going to come. So yeah. I respect that a lot. What is your favorite whiskey outside of Uncle Nearest? Is that a fair question to ask?
Yeah, that's a fair question to ask. So it goes in waves. I can tell you what I drank, what was my absolute favorite before Uncle Nearest is E.H. Taylor Single Barrel Cask Strength. That was my absolute favorite. Do you have it back there? Yeah, you got to have the Colonel. You have to always have the Colonel. And so E.H. Taylor, but I will say I've had two incredible whiskeys this year that I give high marks to. One is the Bottle and Bond that Nicole Austin just put out over at Dickel. I mean, I know her first one won praise and all the rest of that. To me, there's no comparison. This one is so much better. And so if that was incredible, this is so much better. And so, yes, I could sip on that. And then I also, the other night, my husband bought a bottle of, we were in Lake Oconee, and they had Henry McKenna, Bottle and Bond. Okay. The 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, people are going nuts over that.
Oh, let me tell you, I can't recall when I've ever tasted that particular profile in a whiskey. It is, I mean, everything from the nose to the palate, it's as close to perfection as I think bourbon has ever gotten. So yeah, wow. High marks for that.
That's saying something. So when I talked to Marianne Eves, we dug in a lot to female leadership in the industry and what her advice would be to people of color, and then predominantly gearing it towards females who we're in a different time in this country where things are moving in a different direction and females are able to speak up at a lot higher and better, more effective pace. What advice would you give to not the entrepreneur, but like the female who's in the industry and is grinding their gears and trying to push towards getting to the top of whatever company they're working for?
Well, any person who's ever spoken to me, it's not this moment in time that all of a sudden I'm vocal. So I would be giving the same advice 20 years from now. Speak up. Don't look at yourself as being a woman. Don't look at yourself as being a person of color. Don't look at yourself as anything that would create a subconscious limitation. I walk into a boardroom and I don't care what color or demographic or gender is in that room. I walk in there with the same power as every single one of them. I do not look at them as being greater or having, I mean, you're not going to intimidate me walking into a room with a bunch of powerful people. Yeah. And so I think that honing that power so that you do not put limits on yourself. The moment you say like a woman or,
Right.
this moment for female, or this moment for people of color, or this moment. The moment you say that,
Yeah.
you have just put a subconscious limitation on yourself. And so I would say remove any mental limitation you might possibly have and walk into every room. Even if you are within a company, you still have the power and the ability to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to wait till you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Businesses need for their companies to grow. They
Right.
need for new ideas, fresh ideas, but they need them to be vetted ideas. Right. So the same way you have to do a SWOT analysis on your own company as an entrepreneur, you've got to do a SWOT analysis on your ideas as an entrepreneur.
Right.
And I have an entire company full of entrepreneurs. If someone comes to me with an idea that's different from an idea that I have, they could be a part-time brand manager. If their idea is better than mine, theirs trumps mine. Doesn't matter that I'm the CEO. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to say that they're not a subconscious limitation, but there are a lot of layers when you're talking about corporations. So somebody who's a district manager or something who has a groundbreaking idea and they put together the analysis, you got to go through a lot of layers, and a lot of people who have that old school mentality of, hey, if I let this guy get credit for this amazing idea, how we can grow incremental business, who's to say he's not going to leapfrog me? I need to make sure that this is presented in the right. So that does happen.
Look, I'm the wrong person to ask, because I would leapfrog everybody and send my plan to the CEO. So I am absolutely the wrong person to give safe advice, right? It's just not how I am wired. I've got, in my company, I've got a senior VP, I've got 6 VPs, and people all report into them. But in every single instance, if somebody's got a great idea, they can have those conversations with their VPs and all the rest of that stuff. But that stuff's going to come straight up to me. I want the ideas. And so I don't know. I couldn't tell you how within an organization like that. What I will say is there's a particular person at a very large organization that came to my distillery, and she wanted my advice. And she wanted my advice on this particular topic. And my advice was leapfrog. Leapfrog. Go to the person who has the ability to make the decision. Let your boss know you are going to the person, and you guys can work together. But this ultimately needs to go to this person. Leapfrog. And it's what she did, and she got exactly what she wanted. And the relationship with her immediate boss wasn't impacted because she explained to him why she was leapfrogging him to go to her.
That's a subtle nuance.
If you are waiting for somebody to give you your due, you will be waiting a very long time.
Absolutely.
But again, you got to go back to the same way you would do a SWOT analysis for a business to grow a business. You have to do the same with your own business ideas as an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of people will just throw ideas out there, and that's not going to be well received by your immediate boss or by the big person, whoever that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was at Constellation for a bit, and it was a lot to take in. I saw a gap with national and regional accounts to combine IRI and Nielsen analytics to, analyze menus across the country and just turnkey to put products in one fell swoop. I didn't do the leapfrog thing. I put it down in a proper business plan. I talked to my superior, then he talked to his superior, and then we all had a conference, and now it's implemented nationally. So it can happen. So that's some great advice. So
they should take your advice. Yours is safer.
My
advice comes with some risk.
Yeah, well, that's the no tightrope thing. Yeah, so take it with a grain of salt either way. So, okay, so I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I'll ask you this: brand extensions.
Yeah.
Anything in the pipeline? I know you can't say until you can say, but any tips, hints, anything?
Well, I will say that I don't do brand extensions. I have a number of brands, and each one is treated separately. Each one has its own marketing budget. Each one has its own team. And so I think when we do line extensions, most of the time line extensions cannibalize a little bit something that is already there, where we treat it as kind of going back to the growing the pie, right? And so I can tell you that, yes, we've had a new brand in R&D that is a part of the Uncle Nearest family for the last 3 years, and we're getting really, really close to it. And if we can perfect it by next year, it'll be out.
That's awesome. I think a good example of that would be, I don't want to call them RTDs because those have been around forever, but I like to call them pre-batched craft cocktails.
Yeah.
That would be expanding the pie, and I think that's going to be the next catalyst to drive the pie getting extremely bigger in the next say, 4 to 6 years. And then you combine that with luxury, super luxury, premium tier. They got all kinds of labels growing in the next 4 years. I think that's going to be what is driving the market with incremental growth in the next couple of years. So that's a great example.
Not with us, but with others. Yes. With the industry. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to differentiate, coming out with a 10-year and a 12-year. Those are line extensions, but coming through with a pre-batch craft cocktail, that's adding something to the pie that wasn't there already. So that's great. So I want to thank you for your time. I know you're busy.
Sonny. All good.